Schofield, he is the executive vice president of MVHS, and Nancy Petterina, the Page Group. She's the president and CEO of the Page Group, and they have been brought on to assist in the process. And as Nancy said earlier, a lot of it is about communication and communicating with the public and making sure that process this whole entire process is really open and available to the public. Lindsay is actually from Albany, has been waiting on the line for a while. Lindsay, you are on the air. Good morning.
Morning.
What's your question or comment?
Okay, well, I heard that it was a done deal for MVHS to set up in downtown, and there are some concerned residents and visitors of Utica, and the beautiful historic downtown is going to be ruined with the hospital. It might be good for business, but forcing landowners off their property and tearing down very old, beautiful buildings and making Utica special, taking away what makes Utica unique, is really concerning some residents and visitors. And a council member said this week that the city won't force people off their property through eminent domain. So I don't understand how the hospital is saying it's a done deal. So I guess that's my question.
All right, and you're from Albany. Do you work here in Utica?
I don't. I've lived near Utica hometown originally. I work in Albany now, but have visited, have some good friends and family in Utica.
So the question would be about eminent domain. What have you communicated with property owners around there, and how has that gone? And what happens if somebody is against it? They don't want to sell.
Well, I think to the comment done deal, the done deal portion is that's where we've decided we'd like to put the hospital.
Got it.
There's an awful lot of detail that needs to be worked through in order to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that is acquiring the properties. The property owners have been communicated by us what our plans and hopes are to do. The appraisals are in the process of being done now, so we have not communicated that to them. The intent and the hope is that through the normal real estate process, we will purchase those properties from people.
All right.
We haven't begun any discussions about eminent domain.
We've heard from some property owners that are actually do not seem to be against this. And I would say that if they did want to sell, I'm not sure they'd be able to sell if they put the property up for sale today. For some property owners, there's a benefit to this.
There is. I've spoken to a number of the property owners who themselves are excited about a downtown hospital. They know it's going to be a challenge for them to find another location, but they are challenged with the downtown location as it is. So going to another neighborhood that maybe gets revitalized in addition to this particular neighborhood is a positive thing for them.
I have Michael that says she, the woman who was just on, Lindsay, she should visit the area a little more often and see what urban blight looks like. Let me go to Mitch in Clinton. Mitch, you're on the radio. Good morning.
Good morning, Bill. How are you?
Good. Thanks for waiting.
Okay.
And you're on with both Bob and Nancy.
Right. And I got just 3 questions, but they're short ones, so I'll just kind of rattle through them and they can answer all 3, okay?
Okay.
And the first one is the one that I asked State Senator Joe Griffo on Election Day over at the Boulevard Diner. As a general principle, I feel that when there's a big issue, people should vote. So if a permissive referendum is held and the people say, no, don't want to do it, is at the end of it. The second question is St. Luke's Hospital. How strong a look do they take a look at that? Because that seems to have infrastructure, roads, et cetera, room to have it up there. And the third question is the current plan to take the police station and city court, because a lot of money was just put in that city court to modernize it. Seems kind of crazy to put a lot of money in the place and then knock it down a few years later.
Well, that court it's actually a new until a couple of other buildings went up. It was the newest construction in Utica. All right, I'm going to hang up and let you listen on the radio, Mitch and Bob. You want to take those?
Well, as far as the courthouse and the police station, they are not in the.
They're not
in the area in question.
Okay.
So we don't anticipate them being displaced as a result of it.
Okay.
As far as a referendum, well, first of all, this is not a public project, although we serve the public.
Mm-hmm.
The dollars did come from the state. If you note, the legislation talks about the placement of an integrated healthcare community in the population center of Oneida County. Well, that's Utica.
Right.
And we're fulfilling that in order to achieve the $300 million.
I think that has been glossed over a bit. The fact that this is not a government institution, the hospital is you are a private entity.
That's correct.
And that really needs to be paid attention to. Yes, there's public money going into this, but you got to raise the rest of it.
Right. Well, obviously, the majority of our income comes from Medicare and Medicaid, which is government funding, but for services that we provide. We are a private, not-for-profit corporation. We have our own board of trustees. The money that is coming to us from this project is coming from the state of New York out of a healthcare fund. So those dollars are going to go someplace in the state of New York. What better city than Utica to send them to?
And ultimately, this needs to be looked at. This is a business that is looking to locate downtown, and it really needs to be looked that way, I believe, which we wouldn't do a referendum for that, right?
Correct. Mitch's question in the middle was, did you consider St. Luke's campus? Why not? I know you kind of answered part of that.
And if you could add to that the psych center as well. A lot of people talk about the psych center.
I mentioned earlier, we did a list of all potential areas based on acreage availability. Immediately, a bunch were eliminated because of infrastructure issues. We looked at the Utica Psych Center. Difficulty there is we would have to build new highway infrastructure to get ambulances in there, and that would impact people's homes, and that didn't seem to make sense to us. St. Luke's campus, there's pros and cons of the St. Luke's campus. It is surrounded by wetlands, so we'd have to address that. We have 2 large buildings on that campus. We can't knock down the current St. Luke's hospital, then build one on top of it, because we still have to take care of patients. Yeah. The inconvenience and the challenges of building on that campus were very difficult. But again, I do mention that the dollars associated with this project are associated with a downtown location.
Utica location or a downtown location?
The way it's written, it says the population center of Oneida County.
Okay.
And I believe that's the city of Utica.
And if you've ever ridden in an ambulance, and I know that the arterial project might change that down the road, but if you've ever ridden in an ambulance to St. Luke's, I was always coming from the valley. Not that we spent a lot of time in ambulances, but we've made the trip. You come up Champlain. You go down Oriskany, you take a left, and you come up Champlain. Not the most ideal way to get to a hospital currently.
Right. The current the proposed location downtown and the new highway construction.
It'd be all highway in.
All highway in. From the North Country, you're able to get in. Now that the exit is open, we get in there from.
Great exit, by the way.
Yeah, I know you loved it.
Very great exit. That exit. Tom in Rome has a question. By the way, I have a couple of open lines now. 736-0186. Talking with executives from MVHS on the Downtown Hospital Project. Tom, your question is next. Go ahead.
Thank you. I have one question and one comment. My question is, and we keep hearing this through rumors and innuendo, and I would like to know truthfully and forthrightly here, did the governor say, you put this hospital downtown and we'll get you the funding, or did he not? That's number one. And number two, due to the fact that there's over $300 million of public money being involved here, do the panel people and the people of MVHS realize how insulted a lot of the county is? Because it's like we don't have any input whatsoever about where this hospital is going, but you're taking our tax dollars to do it. And I'll hang up and listen on the air. Thank you for taking my call.
I'll let you answer that.
Well, first of all, no one from MVHS, Scott Perrin or myself, has spoken to the governor directly. He didn't give us a call and say, hey, here's what we'd like to do. Yeah. The legislation was written, as I discussed earlier, that talked about where the dollars would be used for, and we are trying to make that happen. The governor has not said to us that if you don't put it downtown, you're not getting the dollars, but the interpretation of the legislation that's been made clear to us through Assemblyperson Brindisi and Senator Griffo are clear that it's intended for a downtown location.
I think this comes from the people that like to talk on the radio, like us. When the money was taken out of the budget, there was a lot of surmising. It was absent from the budget, and some feel that the governor wants it in a downtown location and feels it would be good for the city of Utica. But again, that's really just conjecture. We're surmising at this point.
But what you just said was, in your conversations with Assemblyman Medici, Senator Griffo, that money was intended for downtown.
Correct.
Yeah.
For the population center.
Population
In the
center of
legislature.
Oneida County,
So there's
which is being interpreted as
But
downtown.
whether or not that's
As
the
downtown. Okay.
Correct.
But whether or not the governor, that's the governor's mandating this, we don't really know that.
He's not spoken to us.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know that to be the case.
All right. Charles in Rome is on the line right now. Charles, you're on.
Oh, hi, yes. That came up quick. I just want to comment on the fact that the point that was made that the legislation is being interpreted, but I think we're kind of missing the point here. As I understand it, the decision was made to put the hospital in downtown Utica, and then the legislation was written to support it. Because those dollars can't be particularly earmarked for the city of Utica, the point of the matter is to make sure that when the applications were made, that another community couldn't get the money. It was crafted in such a way that the only way to interpret it would be the money could only go to Utica. So it seems to me that the decision was made to put it in downtown Utica, and then legislation was written by the local legislators to support that decision.
I will say that there's been a lot of talk from, and Charles is from Rome. People in Rome saying, why not Rome? I guess the clarification would be, was the plan to go downtown? Did that come before the legislation?
Downtown was one of the locations we were considering before the legislation.
Got it.
Correct.
Okay.
I mentioned earlier the top three. Those three had been narrowed down prior to the legislation coming through.
And then the other question that the gentleman had earlier that I think we missed was, he said that the county taxpayers are very offended that this money, this $300 million, is being spent. I say this over and over again, and it angers people, but I'm going to say it again and to get your comment. If this $300 million does not come to our area, somebody else is going to get it. This is $300 million that comes from the state on a whole, not from Oneida County. Can you comment on that?
Well, correct. This is money that's allocated for health care in New York State. If the $300 million doesn't come to Utica, it will go to Brooklyn, Manhattan, Buffalo, Rochester, some other location.
Somebody's going to get it.
Correct. It's not going to go to Oneida County or Westchester County to fix potholes. It's going to go to some entity for healthcare purposes.
And the difference between drawing off Oneida County or even the region, Oneida, Herkimer, Madison counties, versus all the counties in New York State is insignificant.
Well, I think it's important to note, over the past 10 years or so, the state of New York has invested significant dollars into a lot of cities for healthcare and for other purposes. The Buffalo Billion. Buffalo has grown tremendously, and healthcare has been a recipient of that. Brooklyn is, in some people's words, a disaster right now from a healthcare perspective in terms of infrastructure.
Yeah.
$700 million is being allocated there. Utica has not received a whole bunch of, or Oneida County hasn't received a whole bunch of state money. This has been our first opportunity that we've taken advantage and been able to take advantage of such a large dollar amount. And I think they're acknowledging the fact that we've run great facilities for a long time. Now it's time to support them.
Well, and it's not just healthcare. It's well over $1 billion that has been invested here between the arterial project, the nanotechnology, and what's going on out of Griffiths International and the hospital. You put all that together, it's over $1 billion. Not something of an injection of cash that we're used to.
No, not at all.
In this area, we're used to being kind of forgotten about. Yeah. Chad in Clinton, you're on the radio.
Good morning, Bill.
Good morning.
My question is, the money to be used for this new hospital is going to result in a hospital with fewer rooms than we presently have. My experience was in 2014, I was admitted at St. Luke's with a condition that required IV for a week, and they didn't know if it was an infectious disease that required. They didn't know what infectious disease it was. So as a result, it was just a cellulitis. But there weren't any rooms available, and I was in a hallway for over 24 hours, and there were multiple people in the hallway at ER. And months later, my mother was admitted with a different situation health-wise, but she too was in the hallway at 83 years old, and had everything administered to her in the hallway. So it seems like right now we have not enough rooms, and with the expectation that Marciano and other development will happen, and that we hope that Utica Rome will have an increasing population in future years, it seems that the idea that we're going to build a hospital with fewer rooms might run contrary to the best plan.
Can you address that?
I can. Currently, we operate hospitals with mostly semi-private rooms. There are instances, because of one infectious disease or another, we have beds that we can't occupy because the other patient room can't have a roommate.
Got it.
When we have a fully private room, we will never have that circumstance. We also know that we have to plan for excessive capacity. There's about 40 days a year where we have more patients than we do have beds. We've learned from some of our early studying, we'll investigate this more when it comes time to build the place or design the place, that many of our rooms will be built such that we could expand them to 2 patients. So we don't have to have patients lying in the hall. That is a challenge for us. Our infrastructures right now don't provide the opportunity and flexibility to move patients around quickly.
And you feel the new facility is going to address this problem?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Absolutely.
Quickly, and then I'm going to wrap with one final question on the phone.
Just on the money, 480 was the total. I was confused on that on the last segment. So 300 from the state, 180 private, for the total of 480. I remember originally the number that was in my mind was 300 state, 300 private. Has that been downgraded? The budget, has that come down?
Well, at one point the estimate was $573 million. That was very early on, before we had done any studies, before we got any professionals involved to help us cost the project out. Now, through our planning, that dollar amount is at 480.
Okay.
So it didn't change the scope of the project; it just changed our estimates, and that could change again once we start getting architects, engineers, and construction managers involved.
I could take calls all day, folks, and I'm going to have to cut it off. Frank in New York Mills, you're the last one. Go ahead with your question.
Good morning. I was wondering where the public can read the environmental impact statement for this project, because it is a very large project. It's going to affect traffic and other things in the city of Utica. It's going to be a major change to the environment in the city of Utica. So there must be an EIS somewhere. Where can the public see that?
All right.
Well, at this point, it's too early in the project to have done that. We need to get
And that's why you say it's not a done. This is where it's going in your eyes now, but not a done deal, because some of these things have not been followed through on as of yet. It's coming.
Right.
Okay.
As we said, May of 22 will open the new facility. Then it's a 3-year construction period. We have 2 years of planning well in advance of that. We have other state and governmental approvals we need to get through. Environmental impact studies will need to be done.
Yeah.
We're already working with the Department of Transportation on traffic pattern and studies there as well. A lot of behind-the-scenes work has to occur long before the first shovel goes in the ground.
And the facility and campus design, long way to go. So
Long way
that's
to go
where
on
we're
that.
looking for community input on that.
And Nancy, community input, really important.
Very important.
And that's part of what you guys are really involved with here,
Right.
to make sure that process, and people feel that it is an open process, transparent.
Yes.
As transparent as it can be when you're dealing with a private entity that's doing construction. And finally, Bob, I wanted to ask you your background. You're talking about this is a big deal for the city, for the region. Your background is in nursing. What's your history? Are you from here? Did you come from somewhere else?
I'm a lifelong resident of the area. I grew up in Holland Patton. Went to school locally. I'm a SUNY grad, St. Elizabeth College of Nursing graduate a few years ago. A staff nurse at St. E's. I've been in the health system for 32 years. Director of nursing, vice president of nursing, and now chief operating officer.
So at the end of the day, one thing I said last week, if you look at both sides, everybody has one goal. There is a goal in common, and that is to make the area a better place. I think everybody has that goal in common, even you guys, and you're vested here.
I've lived here all my life. I certainly would love to remember those days going to Woolworths with my mother after going to Slocum, Dixon, and Court Street. Well, maybe now somebody can go to the clinic on Broad Street and go over to the other diner in downtown.
Bob and Nancy, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope we can do
thank
this
you.
again, because I think it's been very, very productive.
We'd like
So,
to. Yeah.